I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 9, and today we jump into mystical agriculture, and oh boy, do we get farming. So today, as we jump back into some more All the Mods 9, I have a clipboard. Yes, this thing right here. And on that clipboard is a list of to-dos, and well, first things first, you guys have been suggesting I upgrade my jetpack, and I'm going to get that done. And we should be able to get a 0% decline in when we're in hover mode. So hopefully we will be able to no longer slowly fall down, which is kind of annoying. And we're also going to dive into mystical agriculture. And we're going to be doing some in-world farming. And my goal is to transform this entire area over here into multiple places for in-world mystical agriculture farms. Now, when it comes to the jetpack, getting this thing at least to Emerald is going to be a game changer, because if we take a look here, the hover speed is where we will see declines, and going to diamond is almost, not even noticeable, even though we are going to slowly decline while we're in hover mode. We're slowly but surely still falling, even though it is quite, like I said, unnoticeable. But all we have to do is upgrade this to Emerald, and that should be completely gone at that point. So yes, I'm going to get the Emerald one, and we should be set there. And just like that, we now have ourselves an Emerald jetpack. Ah, very nice. And I still think jetpacks are probably one of the best flight options in this pack. Now, take a look at how fast we fly now. And then the hover mode, we don't fall at all. We should notice that this is now got a 0.0 hover speed, meaning we now pretty much have sort of creative flight, but I am going to recommend having throttle control. Because of how fast this is, it does make it almost impossible to control sometimes. So yes, having a little bit of throttle response is going to be necessary. I didn't mean throttle response, I meant throttle control. Now on to the fun that is mystical agriculture, and what I will actually have planned to do today. We are going to need to progress using some of the Inferium that we have from all of our mob farms, and we should be able to progress a little bit through the different crystals and hopefully get ourselves a master infusion crystal. But we also need to start farming base Inferium, and then we need to figure out what is going to be one of the fastest ways of farming this. And well, I think red fertilizer on the dirt and farming it on normal dirt might be one of the best ways early on. That and also lily pads of fertility. So a lot of these things have been nerfed. You can't use, for example, like a watering can inside the modular router unit, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But there are still several ways to make this incredibly fast to grow. Now, you might have noticed there is a scythe in here because I actually want to use modular routers to technically harvest the crop. I think this will be one of the fastest ways, but we need to get up to some premium in order to make it unbreakable. Because I want to use this in a modular router, and this can clear an area up to 15 by 15, which is quite a large area, in fact. So this is going to mean we're going to want 15 by 15 pads that are set up, and I want to try and make them look good. I just don't want your optimal farm laying around. I want them to be optimal, but I also want them to look pretty nice. And to do that, I want to try varying the heights of these crops that we're going to set up over in this area. And that means an entire transformation of this place. And that first means I'm going to need some sort of layer of some sort of material, probably stone, something that we have a large amount of, to sort of get our base layer going. So cobble, here we go. So yes, I think the builder's wand is still going to be one of the best options for this. And I should be able to simply clear off the sides of this so long as I have this set to, let's say, left and right. And yes, I'm just going to build out some platforms, and then we can start to layer the dirt and grass. Now, this is going to make things super easy. I'm going to be using the building gadget, and because I want to make 15 by 15 farms, this is actually perfect, because this is going to make a plot that is exactly 15 by 15 of dirt. Now, I do want to round these out, and I also want to kind of place them sort of sprawled about. I don't want them to be perfect by any means. Even having this sort of placed through the middle is going to work out just fine, but I do want multiple plots that are laid out through here. And then I just need to simply take, for example, like a shovel, and I just need to clear out and kind of not make these perfect, but kind of round them out a little bit. And I do believe I have, yeah, a shovel laying around. So yes, I just need to go through here and sort of trim off the edges on some of these. Now, some of these I do want raised up to be a little bit taller than the other ones. So let's go ahead and get these raised up. And now that we have them trimmed, it looks a little bit nicer. And then I just need to simply kind of feather in the different materials and sort of blend this together. Now for the fun part of just painting in the walkways. And this is what I've sort of been doing, just kind of hovering about. And I am painting in these pathways that are going to lead up to the individual farms. And this is mostly for looks, as we are going to be flying around for the most part. But yes, I do want to get the pathing in, and then I can start to sort of lay out how I actually want my foliage to look. Now, I think when it comes to getting water in this crop, and if we're not going to use mystical agriculture soil, which by the way doesn't require water, we are going to need this. So I'm thinking 1, 2, 3 off the side, and then the fourth block out. That should leave us with 1, 2, 3, 4, which will end up including this going forward, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4 off of here, which is exactly what we need. So this should cover 1, 2, 3, 4, the entirety of this whole cube here. And then this one over here will also include this middle section, meaning that we can get away with a 15 by 15 area with just using 4 spots of water. So nice. After just a little bit of bone meal to kind of get this looking nice and natural. There we go. So this is looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and let's see, expand this a little bit and this. And it's really easy to do by just placing this in randomly on some dirt, because it really fills in and looks natural. Now, I am going to have to go back in and replace some of this with the dirt again, but for the most part, this is filling in nicely. You know, sometimes it's just sort of amazing how you can literally take an area that was just a giant pit and just turn it into something that looks as nice as this. It is really, really satisfying. Now, something that I really want to make is going to be this Emperor's Chalice. The cool part about making this, which is from Reliquary, is that it's an infinite water bucket. So we now have an infinite water bucket that we can place in here. And it's so nice. Look at this. No need to run back and forth. Oh, and you can actually vein mine the hoe. That is so convenient for this. You know what? It is kind of interesting building with brick, as I've never really done that before. And so this being one of the first times I've actually started experimenting with this, it's actually really nice and fits really well with some of these other materials. Now, after a couple of hours of work, you know, just a little bit, we now have areas that we can call our farming facility, crafting location, mystical agriculture, production facility. That's a huge name. Maybe you guys can come up with a better one down in the comment section below. But this is where I want to get our storage going, because these are going to be producing a lot of resources very quickly. And we now need a way to not only farm them, which we're going to get into, but a way to store them. And I think setting up the storage first is the best step. Now, the storage mod I want to use for our farm is going to be functional storage. And to be able to do this, we are going to need to place them in the walls. We're going to need to use a controller, but we also need a way that we can feed the items into the storage. And that is going to be with the help of a controller. With all of the stuff combined from functional storage, it should be a quite functional storage network. But how do we get the items from here over to here? Well, to solve this problem, last episode, we ended up setting up a blaze farm. And between the blaze and the obsidian, we now can craft ender chests, and we can craft them more effectively. And I know I dabbled a little bit in ender chests last episode, but we're going to need more ender chests, and you can actually have more than just 2 of them in the world. Any of them that are on the same code will all interact with each other. So we can have this all linked to one essential ender chest. But if we have items flying in here really fast, there's another problem we're going to have to solve. How do we transfer items very quickly? And I think this can be done with the help of Laser IO. Honestly, one of the fastest ways that you can send items from one location to another is utilizing Laser IO. It is insanely fast and is probably one of the fastest methods of doing it in the pack. So let's go ahead and set up what the fundamental idea is for using Laser IO and how we can set this up to be the fastest possible. And that is going to be with our storage controller going right here. And then we're going to have an ender chest that is going to be on top of a single Laser IO node. And then if that is there, this should be pretty straightforward, right? The way that the laser IO works, and the cool part about it being in this version, is we can actually see now what is above and below or connected entirely to our laser IO node. And you may be wondering, my laser IO node doesn't look the same because mine has this off to the side. Well, that's where this card holder comes into play. This is pretty cool because you can put item cards in here and they stack where they don't stack in your inventory. They can also hold your upgrades. And whenever you open up a laser IO node, they're going to be over here. And you can actually configure them in bulk while they're all setting like this. So that's another nice little thing. But what we need to do is connected to our ender chest, which is the items that are going to be pulled in or pulled out of, we need to set up an export item card. So this item card is going to be set, if we simply right click it, going to be set to extract. And this is where this gets really powerful. By default, we have a 1 transfer amount, and this can go up to 8 items every 20 ticks, every 1 second, basically. But we can speed this up by using overclocker upgrades. So with overclocker upgrades, we can hold down Control and Shift, and we can set this to its max, which is 64 items. And then we can also right click while holding down Control and Shift, and we can set this to 1, which is its lowest tick rate that it can go. So this means every tick, it will send 64 items. That, my friends, is the equivalent of 1,280 items every second. But it gets even better than that because, like I was saying, this is an incredibly powerful mod. You can actually do this for every slot that is connected to here. But all you're going to need, though, to do that is node overclockers, and you'll need 8 of them, 1 for each extra slot that you want this to work. And the node overclockers will allow these to all work in conjunction simultaneously, meaning that you can essentially have 9 stacks every tick being pulled out and sent into a single card that is going to, for example, go into our storage drawer. So this one is just going to need a regular item card. It's so nice. Another cool little feature is if you had multiple item cards, if you remember how Ender.io used to work back in the day, you can set channels, and these channels correspond to each other. So if I set this one to 1, and then I go back and I look at my item card that's sending, it's not going to connect until I set it to channel 1. Now, both of these cards are linked together and will work in conjunction with one another. But if they were not together, they would not interact with each other at all. So this is the way you can set up multiple interactions just using one node. Not to mention the fact that you can connect these all together and you can have laser arrays and have multiple things all connected to one singular network. But in our case, we're just using it to transfer items from one location to another. Now with this setup, I want to start making the drawers that things are going to go into. And I want to put them into the walls here, including even the back side of the walls. And to be able to do this, I'm thinking about using frame drawers. What I want the frame drawers to have the inside being birch, stripped birch specifically, and the outside being brick. To do this, we need to set this in a very specific way. So if we put the top left slot here, that's going to be the outside that you can see there. I want that to be brick, and I want the inside to be the stripped. So we can do it this way. However, I do not want to use 1x1s, at least for this particular setup. We'll use 1x1s for some other things, but I do want to use 2x2s. That way we can store the seeds and we can store the essence. I actually believe I meant to say 1x2s. I keep thinking of them as 2x2s. They are not 2x2s. I want the drawer that has 2 slots. And this is how we're going to make those. So now that I have all of the drawers set in, let's talk about the storage controller and the way we link things to it. So all we need to do is simply right click in the air. And we can set this to remove mode or add mode. And this is going to affect how we add storages to the controller. If you hold down Shift, you can change between multiple selection mode, which will allow you to drag select multiple inventories all in one go, or single mode, which allows you to select them individually. The cool part about this storage controller is that it has an area, and that area allows you to wirelessly connect these drawers to it, and it will still allow you to send and receive from it. So let's talk about a new feature when we talk about in regards to range. Buzz had posted on Twitter asking what should be added to this mod, and I had suggested range extension. By default, the range has not changed. So the default range that it's always been is still default, but now we can expand it quite a bit. So the controller now has an actual inventory. If we shift right click, we now have a range upgrade slot, and we'll notice we'll be able to see what range is whenever we shift right click on here. And so by default, we can now observe the range, but we can also add to it. So if we ever wanted to have more storage that's more spread apart, we can now do that. Thanks to the suggestion, you're welcome, over on Twitter, and Buzz implemented this. So this is actually quite nice. And let's go ahead and take a look at how we link these now. So once we have this selected, we can now, depending on what mode we're in, if we're in, for example, add mode, and we're in single mode, we can just simply click the drawers one by one. But if we're in multiple mode, we can click and then drag, and then that is going to set to the add right here, so long as we're clicking on the actual drawer. So I don't know, I tend to swap back and forth. If you want to remove, you can simply drag and remove. Now all of those inventories are removed. So this is pretty straightforward in my opinion. I typically like to have in multiple mode, and then I drag and add multiple, and then I add this row, and these will all continue to link. We just want to make sure that as of right now, we don't have any items going into this just yet, because we have yet to lock all of our drawers. So we should probably talk about how to lock these. Now, if you've ever used the storage drawers mod in the past, this works very similarly. However, we have this tool called a configuration tool, and it does have multiple modes, which allows us to see different information about our drawer and to turn those things on and off. We can also lock our drawers. Now, by default, I think it's a good idea to just simply right click onto the controller and lock every drawer that is now connected. But you can lock them individually by right clicking this on here, and you'll notice the little lock icon going on and off. That lets you know that all of the drawers are now locked. What this is going to let me do is individually specify where I want my things to go. So once I receive an item in here, I can actually start to I can start to place them elsewhere, right? I can start to place them in the drawers, and then they will start to go in, but not until I have defined where I want them to go. This is going to allow me to organize this just a little bit easier. By the way, one thing I wanted to note to you guys who are potentially playing on a server and are using Ender chests specifically, keep in mind that you can actually apply a diamond onto this Ender chest, and it will make it private to you. And apparently you can use emeralds, which will apparently apply to a team that is kind of configured. And then by default, I believe it is global. If it is gold, it's global. So everyone can use it. Just something to note. Now that this is all set up, let's get into the fun part. And that's actually setting up our first mystical agriculture farm. Now, one thing I should have tons of just from the start from our mob farm alone is tons of Inferium essence. Let me go ahead and turn our mob farm off for right now so I can get this all sorted up. But we have tons, and I mean tons, of Inferium essence just from our mob farms alone. And this is amazing, as it's going to allow us to sort of jumpstart our progression. And when I say progression, I mean it, because by default, we need to make these crystals, and this is going to allow us to upgrade our tiers of material. And I want to try my best. I don't know if I can do it with what we currently have, but I want to try my best to get as close as I can to making some sort of scythe. And this means I'm going to need to go through this mod that is called tiered crystals, which in my opinion just adds more progression and more tiers that you have to go through before you eventually make your master infusion crystal, which is ultimately what we want to get to. And that progression, while doesn't seem like a whole lot, is quite tedious, and you are going to have to produce and basically turn your Inferium essence into higher and higher tiers of essence. And that is the essence of the crafting. And before you know it, you're going to be all the way up to Supremium essence. But it goes even further than this. This can actually be upgraded into Insanium essence, which is what we're going to eventually work towards. But I want to get that master infusion crystal done, and then we can easily set up automation for this. Fair warning with this, to be able to make the master, you are going to need 4 Insanium, which I think is worth it once you get to it. But keep in mind, you're going to be using a lot of these basic Inferium. You will be going through these like crazy. They only do 256 processes per. So yeah, you run out very fast, and we're going to need all of these to be processed. I'll tell you what, it's not too bad. I will say that it's not too bad to get to this point. But there we go. We now have a master infusion crystal, but now we are pretty low on resources. Now for the fun part, automation. And we should be able to do this with laser IO. And this whole line here is actually going to all work in conjunction with each other. It's going to be pretty cool. So let's go ahead and try this out. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to notice that this ender chest right here is connected to this laser IO node. And we can actually get all of these laser IO nodes connected to each other. So I got to click here or shift right click, and I'll select this, and then I'll just right click. Now this is connected, and I can do the same for this and click on this one. And now they are all connected to each other via this laser line, which means that all of the cards can now interact with one another. And that means we can start to work with something that is going to be called filters and priority. Now, one thing I know is the bottom here, this is extracting from the ender chest, and it is sending items into this storage controller. But what if I told you you can actually set the priorities differently? So inside here, I can lower this priority, and that is going to mean it is going to try to send to other cards that are higher than it first. Which is very, very important. I think priorities are some of the best ways of managing automation systems. And so with this, there we go. Hopefully that's not too complicated to understand, but we're going to use that when we go to set up a card that interacts with the essence, right? Because we don't want essence to accidentally go in here. I know it won't go in here anyways because it would have to be within the filter, but let me go ahead and show you this. We want to send essence into here from the top. And so for this, we are going to use some cards, some item cards, and we can actually leave these on the same channel. So right up top here, we are going to place an insert card. This insert card has a higher priority, but I'm also going to set up a filter for the essence just to make sure that it only sends inferium essence into the top. So it's going to send that inferium essence incredibly fast into here. But once everything's done crafting, which we'll get into in a second, we then want to pull out of here. And so we're going to be able to simply pull out of this with a different upgrade, right? So we'll set this and we'll set this to extract just like our other one. And we'll also use our cards from laser IO. So there we go. We'll get some overclockers in here. And the overclockers will allow us to make this faster, just like we did earlier. And then it needs a place to insert. Well, believe it or not, we don't have to set an insert. We don't have to send it back into the ender chest. We can just let what it's going to send flow right through the same insert card that we have set here. And this is why using laser IO is so convenient. Now all we have to do is set up the automation and give our tier 3 crafter some power. Now, when I set these things up for automation, you do want to provide a location for each of your tier. For example, I'm going to give 3 or 4 slots for inferium essence, and then we'll go step by step up the tier until we have all of these in here. And then make sure to include the master infusion crystal. And then I'm going to use just any other material. I typically use cobblestone for this, and I'm going to seal off all of the other slots. Now you can use inferium essence, but I'm just going to go ahead and seal it off. And then I'm going to hit remember. And that allows me to pull out all of this, and it will remember these slots, making sure we always have space for the items that are crafted. Now, to get into the crafting recipe, this is a different story. So this isn't too bad to set up, especially if you already have some inferium. So we need to select the first slot, and then we make sure that this is set to insert. So that way, whenever the craft happens, it's going to send the result into this blue area, which is the insert. Now you have another mode, which is exit C, and so on and so forth. And these are going to be nice, for example, for the last craft, right? The exit C is going to keep the master infusion crystal back in the input, and it works like for buckets and things like that. We'll keep them in the input, whereas the product is sent to the output. So for most of these, for the first few, we are going to set it up like this. And then I want to use the master infusion crystal that I have right here to set the recipe. And so there we go. We have our first recipe done. And then we just need to continue going up all the way until we get to Insanium. Now for the last one that is Insanium, just like I said earlier, we want to set this one to exit C, which is going to keep the master infusion crystal inside of this inventory, allowing the Insanium to pass through. And there we go. Now we have effectively automated this entire process. And all we have to do is start farming Inferium Essence. Now for the automation of our crops, at least starting out, it's actually going to be quite simple. We're going to be using a modular router that is going to click with an activator. So this is how we're going to actually manually harvest our crop. And so if we place down our first Inferium seed, actually after placing down our fertilizer, which we do want to get red fertilizer set up on all of these spots. But for right now, I'm just going to place them right here because we kind of got to get things going first. But we're going to place down this right here. And then we're also going to use lily pads of fertility. Now the lily pads, I'm actually going to be placing in a bed of water underneath here. So that is also kind of important. And it's really nice that we have this nice flat area underneath that is going to allow me to do this. So underneath here, I am going to fill this out with these lily pads, just placing them just directly below here. And this actually should support this going vertically, but this is going to just speed it up even more. And my goal is to make more of those later on, but they are quite expensive to put together. So yeah, for right now, this is what I have. And we'll continue to grow as we progress on. But let's go ahead and get this rest of the way set up. So directly on top of my crop here, I want to place my router. And then I want to set up my activator module. So I want this clicking on the down, and then I want the action to just be simply right clicking. And so putting this in the modular router, I will just put the item that I want it to right click, being, for example, right now, the scythe, which will do a 7x7 area, and then we should be ready to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and place this down, and this is going to right click. Now, right now I'm collecting the items, but what we want it to go into is an ender chest. And so I should be able to place an ender chest like directly on top here, and then place an advanced collector on top of that. And this is where we're going to get that range of 15x15 over here, which should be able to encompass the entirety of this farm once we have this one running. And this whole setup can be duplicated and moved into all of the other locations. Now, something that you may want to note, whenever you have your claim area protected, for example, with FTB chunks, you're going to want to click the little purple icon down here. And what you're going to want to set up, if you are using something like this that is a fake player, you're going to want to allow fake players so that way it can actually harvest everything. So if you're experiencing that issue, it's because you don't have fake players allowed in your claim. This is not only the issue that you will encounter with such things as modular routers, but this can even affect spells from Ars Nouveau and many other mods. Now, with this being harvested, we should now notice that this is filling with Inferium and slowly but surely progressing this through the tiers. And we're seeing it come in just like that, which is exactly what we want to see and is going to allow us to continue to expand this farm and making it larger and larger. Now, also, if you're wondering what this red fertilizer does, it actually bone mills the crops that are underneath it occasionally. And the weird thing is it seems to also be interacted with by the lily pads, which allows us to rapidly increase in speed growth. Now, the only thing that would make this go incredibly fast would be if we could put a watering can inside of something that can click, but that has unfortunately been disabled, so we can't make it go any faster that way. Now, as you can see behind me, this is going incredibly fast. And yeah, with very little effort actually involved in getting it to this rate. The reason I have only sent it out 7x7, even though it can go up to 15x15, is because we have to continue to upgrade our scythe. At the moment, it can only do a 7x7 and also does not have infinite durability. But as we continue to go up, the durability will increase all the way up until it hits Supremium, in which it no longer has a durability, meaning it is unbreakable. And that is the one that we need for each of our farms. But like with all good things, they come with time, and we will eventually have many mystical agriculture farms set up, and it will be producing a ton of resources that we can all apply into our system over here. Now, I can't just not show you the final product. This right here is literally insane, and I love it. So this is only going to get more powerful the more lily pads of fertility that we eventually make. But look at this. We can take this Imperium. This is the same scythe that we started with. I've just been upgrading it as we've gone along, but now it is officially unbreakable. And this is going to be our primary source of Inferium essence, leading into the other farms that are going to be set up in a similar fashion. And we'll be able to easily now craft multiple scythes that are Supremium that will work in all of our other setups. But look at this. This is such a beauty. And this entire 15 by 15 crop works very, very fast. So with this, we now have an insane farm. It's really, really nice. And this is only going to lead into bigger and better things. So guys, if you did enjoy today's episode and you did learn something new, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, as we're getting super close to 600,000 subscribers. Kind of blows my mind every time I think about it. But guys, I do appreciate it. And be sure to leave a comment down below. What do you think? Well, I did ask a question earlier today, but what do you think is faster than this? Is there any way to farm faster than this? I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments below, as that's how I learned. And well, now it's time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that is going to be a huge thanks that goes out to Sweet Nectar. Thank you so much for your amazing support, by the way, over on the Discord, becoming a Discord premium member and supporting me in one of the best ways possible, absolutely going above and beyond. So be sure to check out the Discord, discord.gg/ChosenArchitect, and join the amazing crew today. And well, guys, I appreciate it. I hope to see you in the next episode. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye.